10/2026. And I'm going to ask if you all would like to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. It seems appropriate. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And we will start tonight's work session with public comments on non-agenda items. Are there any public comments on non-agenda items tonight? Seeing none, I would like to start with our first work session, Life-Saving Awards. Chief Brown? Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to give out some awards tonight. We're going to start with a short video, and then I'll kind of elaborate a little further after. Nancy, whenever you're ready.
Okay, after 30, I want you to stop. Brand, give her 2 breaths.
29, 30.
Do we pinch the nose? With your hand under her neck, pinch her nose closed, and tilt her head back again. Give her 2 more regular breaths.
2 breaths?
Okay, and then pump the chest 30 more times fast, twice per second.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
Breath?
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24.
I've always felt like I've been pretty active. Try and walk the green belt usually about 4 times a week. But I don't know, I suppose the last 6 months, I didn't realize that I was more tired than.
All right, Mayor, council members, we will be posting the rest of that video on our Facebook page later on tonight. It's about 12 minutes in length. And Peggy is here in the audience with her family tonight, and she gives a phenomenal explanation as to what occurred that day, her and her husband and her family members. So I would encourage you later, if you have the time to watch it. And now I'm going to get on with some presentations, and I'm going to invite Heather Johnson, Rebecca Evans, Brad Andrus, and Caroline Smith to come on up here. As you can see, they are not in uniform because they are not members of the Laramie Police Department, but oftentimes it's just as important, if not more important, to recognize members of our community when they perform a service that we get paid to perform, and they're there and they do the exact same thing and oftentimes better. So it's my honor tonight to be able to share their actions, a little bit about them. This citation is presented in recognition of the outstanding bravery, selfishness, and life-saving actions of Heather, Rebecca, Brad, and Caroline. On September 16th, 2025, Heather, Rebecca, and Brad responded without hesitation to a medical emergency involving a subject experiencing sudden cardiac arrest. Demonstrating calmness under pressure and exemplary courage, they immediately initiated CPR, providing critical care during the most vital moments. At the same time, Caroline Smith promptly called 911 and remained on the line, relaying the information needed and following the dispatcher's instructions. She effectively communicated CPR guidance and ensured continuous life-saving efforts were maintained until emergency responder personnel arrived on scene. Through their quick thinking, teamwork, and unwavering commitment to helping another person in need, these individuals played a direct and decisive role in saving a life. Their actions resulted in the subject fully recovering from the incident and serve as a powerful example of civic responsibility, compassion, and heroism. Their extraordinary efforts reflect the highest standards of community service and bring great credit to themselves and the community they represent. Thank you. Mayor, council members, next we have some Laramie Police Department employees and Albany County Sheriff's Department employees we'd like to recognize. Sarah Felton, Dispatch Supervisor. Sergeant Jacob Onstead, Officers John Rocha and Bruce Ward, please come on up. And Community Service Officer Robert Austin. On September 16, 2025, Laramie Police Department and Laramie Fire Department personnel responded to a call for an unresponsive female located along the Greenbelt Riverwalk near Interstate 80. Access to the patient was severely limited, creating a significant obstacle for emergency responders. Dispatch Supervisor Felton took the 911 call and remained composed under pressure. Through her expert guidance, she provided clear direction and instructed the caller in performing CPR that directly contributed to life-saving efforts for the patient. Demonstrating exceptional teamwork, quick thinking, and dedication to duty, Sergeant Onstead, Officers Rocha and Ward transported medical crews to the remote scene in their patrol vehicles, ensuring immediate medical intervention. Upon arrival, emergency personnel provided advanced life-saving efforts, including multiple defibrillator, I butchered that, shocks, while Community Service Officer Robert Austin utilized his department vehicle to transport the patient, officers, and fire department personnel from the difficult location to a waiting ambulance. And I'll add to this, the ambulance wait was overweight for the bridge, so our ambulance team with the fire department was unable to get to the scene successfully in their vehicle, and they actually started walking on foot before CSO Austin was able to arrive to the scene, pick them up, put them in the back of the truck with the board, went down, picked up the patient, and then came back to the ambulance, which took a tremendous amount of time. It's pretty impressive that CPR worked for that length of time due to these heroes. Due to the swift actions, adaptability, and cooperation of these officers, dispatch, and the Laramie Fire Department, the patient regained a pulse and was subsequently airlifted to Cheyenne Regional Medical Center, where she was reported to be alive and improving the following day. Attached to this is an email from Shift Supervisor Jeremy Belaski about the incident and commending the work of the Laramie Police Department officers and their life-saving efforts. Their collective efforts exemplify the highest standards of professionalism, courage, and service to the community. For their instrumental roles in in saving a life, I commend Sergeant Onstead, Officer Rocha, Officer Ward, Dispatch Supervisor Felton, and CSO Austin. Congratulations on your life-saving award. And Mayor, if it's okay with you, I'd like to invite the officers and the citizens who received their awards tonight to come up and take a picture with you, and also invite Peggy if she'd like to come up.
Yes. emotional start to
Really awesome. Wow. Has everybody got you around here?
What have you done that's worthwhile today? What? Oh.
Okay, we will call to order, and since that was an agenda item, is there any public comment on that agenda item? Thank you, Tom. That was really heartwarming, and it was, to me, a display of our Laramie community, the way we are with one another and the way we support one another, and it just makes me so appreciative. Now we'll move on to work session item number 2, and that is a presentation related to possible building code updates. And is that Lucas Witt going to join us? Good evening, Lucas.
Mayor, council members, that's a tough act to follow, but I'll do what I can. Thank you guys for taking the time to hear us out on our meeting and how everything went last month, 2 months ago now. So I'll just kind of run through briefly our meeting and then kind of get into some of the codes that we discussed. Oh, thank you. There we go. So what we did was a little bit different, I know, than what we've done in the past. But we wanted to make sure that our contractors were being heard. So we get out in the field every day, and we want to make sure that what our contractors are telling us, whether it's codes that are being held up or holding them up with permits or plan reviews or anything like that, we make a good effort to be able to fix those things. So we sent out some invites. We sent out emails to a lot of contractors to try and get as many contractors as we could, just to hear them out and to try and work with them to try and find a solution for everything that we could. So kind of as I discussed, it's a little bit different than what we've done. We went through building codes. Mostly of it was through our international residential code. There was a few with the building code itself. So just so you know, obviously the residential code deals with residential 1 and 2 family dwellings, and then the building code deals pretty much with all commercial codes. So we tried to give our contractors an opportunity well ahead of time to give us a little bit of a heads up on things that they might, present to us. So we sent out about a month in advance. You can kind of see there to the left. Everybody that was invited got this email and this opportunity to fill out. And what it was they would give us a code and a code reference and what it said and how they kind of wanted to make changes or what their thoughts were on it. So as it says there, we sent this out to probably 500 licensed contractors, whether they be local or, we get a lot of out-of-town contractors that do work here in town too, so it affects them as well. So we did our best to try and get those out so we would have time to be able to go over their codes and the changes that they wanted to make. Additionally, when we were in our meeting, we also handed out paper surveys, so if people for whatever reason didn't have an opportunity to fill those out online and get them to us, if they thought of something maybe that triggered in their brain while we were going through codes, maybe they had something that something additionally that they wanted to give us. And also we kept that survey open through 2025. And I also want to make note that this isn't going to stop us from hearing codes in the future. If there's stuff that comes up out in the field or contractors have ideas down the road, we're more than open to hearing those and hopefully coming up with solutions for them. Some of the results that came back weren't great for us. We sent them out 500, and we got one contractor that submitted 2. Like I said, we tried to give as much opportunity as we could, and as you'll see in here, we did go through quite a, not a lot, but we did go through some in our meeting as well that came up. So I'm hoping in the future when we do more of these that our contractors will take that opportunity to, to fill those out and give us a chance to be able to go through those things. So if you guys have throughout these codes, if you guys have any questions, let me know. We'll go through any concerns or anything like that. Please let me know. So one of the suggestions that came through from our contractor was a really good one, and it's one we've had discussions on out in the field. So this one pertains to energy, our energy code. So a couple code cycles ago, they made the change to require all housing to install for all of their lighting. They have to either have automatic shutoff controls or a manual dimmer with automatic shutoff controls. The main reason they brought that in is obvious, right? They're trying to get people to make sure their lights are shut off if they're not using them. The downfall to that is it's a big cost. You buy a $3 switch versus even a $10 switch, and you add those up throughout your house, it becomes a big cost. So we heard that. We've been discussing that in our office for quite some time, and we agree with them. So our thought is to recommend this switch, to make it an optional thing for homeowners. If they want to put those in, they're more than welcome to. What we have an idea of is if we require it, more than likely they'll install it for us, and then homeowners will probably take the time to change them out because they don't see the benefit of it. So that we felt like that was a really good one. Like I said, we've discussed that one multiple times, and those are the types of things that we were hoping to see come through beforehand. The other one that came up from the same contractor was regarding decks, and in the code you can see there in 507.2 it talks about connecting beams to either house or to posts, and codes in the past have always been they've got to have a long through bolt with washers on either end just to make sure it's attached correctly. And he was hoping that we could find a different method if they have a structural screw or anything like that. What we did tell the contractor was there are provisions in the code that allow this. So this one, although it was a great one to bring up, there are ways to be able to use that. They do make, they're always making advancements in materials or anything like that. So there are structural screws that you don't have to have, jump through the hoops of getting all the way underneath the deck to make sure everything's connected. They can drive straight through and it meets the specifications as required per code. So that was a good one, but it was an easy one for us to get them notes on. So kind of going back into the meeting, it was about 2 hours long. The first hour, to be honest, was spent kind of going through things that the contractors felt like needed to be improved on, not necessarily code-wise. As you know, we've gone through some changes with our software and some in-house changes too that have brought a little bit of, I guess, delay in some things. So I wanted to give the contractors an opportunity to hear them out on all things. So about the first hour, we went through and discussed. A good portion of it was regarding timing and hearing out contractors on, you know, if we call in for an inspection and we don't hear back for a day or two, why is that the case? It didn't used to be the case. And those are things that I want them to be able to come forward to us and let us know so we can make those changes. Because if they don't tell us, we're never going to know, right? So those are things that I appreciate them coming forward with. You know, it was, although we didn't get to codes until the second half of it, I felt like it was necessary to be able to hear them out on this stuff. So we did a little bit of homework on this, and we went through our IT department and kind of came up with some data to help at least maybe clear some of that stuff up with. So as you can see there, our permit tech receives an average of 20 calls a day, with 60 of them being answered as they come in. He gets at least 30 emails a day. The big one there, right, we've got, in an 8-hour day, we've got potentially 50 points of communication or more coming through in a single day, and that's about a single one every 10 minutes. And I want to make sure that our staff, or that our public knows, that our contractors know that we are trying to find ways to make sure we are getting things answered as promptly as we can. And I just want to make sure people know that, you know, we're not avoiding calls, we're not, you know, screening calls or anything like that. We're busy. We get a lot of people that walk in because they don't want to deal with email or phone calls, so they like to come in person. And that happens on a daily basis too. So we are trying to make ways, like I said, to make improvements on that, and I want them to know that. We did, like I said, we did discuss inspections and scheduling of that and the timing of that. Like I said, that was a big part of that first hour. There were some suggestions that were brought up, and we listened to them. One was, you know, can we do it like you would schedule a haircut, right, where we have a schedule in front of them and you have this time, and can we just choose that time? The hard part for us is not all inspections are the same. You might have a 30-minute inspection, you might have an hour inspection, you might have a 2-hour inspection. And for them to be able to schedule that in a system like that would be a little more complex than just simply choosing. If we did something like that, we would have to come in on the back end to make sure that those other times are scheduled out. And I know a lot of places like a barber have an app that's all they use, right? They just go through that and things are scheduled. So we heard that. It's just tougher for us to be able to schedule that way. So currently that's not a route we're going to take. And in the software, we're still working through kinks. Stuff comes up every day. You guys know computers aren't always perfect. So we want to make sure that if it's not working, we're at least getting information out to them. Hey, we got your phone call. We're doing our best to try and get you guys answers back. We had issues today, and to make sure that you guys are understanding that. So these are, I guess, do you have any questions on that before I jump into our stuff? So these next ones are ones that our staff have gone through ourselves, and ones that we feel like can be addressed. So one of the big ones that I think has been an issue for quite some time is our energy efficiency, and more related to our residential side. Part of the process of plan review is when you submit a new house or you're doing a remodel in your house, you have to submit that with what type of insulation you're doing, what type of new windows you might be putting in, those types of things. And the energy code is really specific on, depending on what type of, or where your location is in the United States, what type of insulation you should be using. And as each code changes, it's just getting more and more restrictive. They're putting more and more emphasis on things that may not apply to us. So one of the options they can choose, so for instance, if you were to submit a new house, you would either follow the code exactly, or you have an option that's something that's called a res check. So it's a free website that you go in, you put your square footage, you put your location, you put all your information. I'm going to put an R49 in my ceiling, and I'm going to put this. And then it gives you, based off of what you put in, if you pass their website, if you pass that or not. And like I said, with those codes being updated all the time, that is also being changed. So it's getting harder and harder for them to pass. I mean, right now, the residential code requires that you put in an R30 in a wall. The only way you're going to accomplish that is if you do spray foam in a full 2x6 wall. And I can tell you that the cost on that it's a lot. I mean, that, in my mind, that would be the only way you could accomplish that. The res check allows you to, you know, if I have better windows, say, you could maybe bring down that insulation in your walls, or if you put in more in your ceiling, you could do that same thing. And what we've recommended and what we've kind of seen in other jurisdictions, the city of Cheyenne being one, is they have created their own table based on their own city. And they've said that if you follow this table exactly, it's not to the extreme that the current energy code is. It's maybe doled down a little bit. And if you can put everything in like this table says, then we're good. And I feel like it's a good solution to be able to speed things up, because a lot of times the res check, you know, I've been on either phone calls or in person or emails. Hey, I'm having problems with this program. You know, it's no matter what I do, I can't seem to pass the res check to be able to allow me to move forward. So I think, you know, with me and my staff being able to figure out, you know, if we say instead of an R30, we could say an R21, because I know in town that's a pretty, you know, reasonable find in town. And they used to be 21 even like 2 code cycles ago. So I feel like is a good solution to maybe not just speed things up, but also to still meet the intent of the code. One of the other ones that actually was brought up through one of the contractors that spoke up in our meeting was this code section 302.13. And basically what this says is, if you have, say, an unfinished basement in a new house, you still have to provide fire protection from those floor joists. So if you, rather than just leaving the floor exposed, and then say if there was a fire that caught downstairs, because most of the time there's either a water heater or a furnace down in that basement. If something was to catch fire, then that floor assembly is going to weaken quicker. And the whole reason, or one of the main reasons that this code was brought forward from my research, was not just for the homeowner. I mean, if they're in the middle of the night and they're sleeping and there's a fire, I mean, their alarm should go off, but that's going to start doing damage, and it's going to allow, if they're protecting those floors, allow time for, one, for the homeowner to be able to get out, and two, the bigger one is, until firefighters get there, it will give them a little bit of time, so when the firefighters show up and get into the house, that floor is not just going to completely collapse and firefighters are going to get out. So a couple of the contractors felt like that we shouldn't have this, because if I build a house and I don't finish the basement, I might come back in and finish the basement later. So if up there, you can either, there's a couple different methods to achieve that. Mostly they either provide a 1/2-inch drywall on the ceiling, or you can provide fire sprinklers just in the basement area. And their thought is, either it doesn't make sense for me, because if I put drywall up, I'm just going to have to take it back down to finish the basement, which I get. Or if I put in sprinklers, I'm probably just going to cap those off, because I'm going to end up putting drywall on there afterwards. But in the meantime, we have no clue how long that ceiling is going to be open for, how long that's going to be unprotected for. So we feel like this should remain in our code as is for the safety of homeowners and for the safety of our firefighters as well. Along the same lines of the sprinkler systems, another one that was provided in our meeting was currently 1 and 2 family dwellings, or currently, I guess, in our building code, International Building Code, it states that all our occupancies, which is residential, should be or shall be sprinkled. They should have automatic sprinklers in them. What we have not, I think this was it's something that was, they figured it out maybe even 10 years ago or so, that they weren't going to enforce this, and it wasn't ever changed in our city code. So this is something that everything else that is required in the building code that requires fire sprinklers would stay. But in 1 and 2 family dwellings, we do not require that currently to be sprinkled. The whole house is what it would be. So this would be a code, basically a city code update to reflect that, to make sure that, you know, that we're not, it wasn't clear enough. It's just maybe a code clarification is all it would be. The other one that was brought up is along the same lines, but this pertains to anything basically over an R occupancy that's over the 1 and 2 family dwellings. This one specifically talks about 3 and 4 unit apartment complexes. And currently through code, that would be required. And there are methods, it was discussed in our meeting, there are alternative methods that potentially would allow them to not do this, but even though you wouldn't be installing fire sprinklers, you would be installing fire walls to separate those units. To be honest, I'm not sure the cost on that. I can tell you that in an R occupancy, you don't have to go through the same, you don't have to use the same materials as, say, a bar or a restaurant. You can use it's a CPVC, which is an orange pipe. It's a lot cheaper. You don't have to use the steel pipe like you would in a restaurant or something like that. So we feel, myself, our staff, and our fire marshal feel like this should stay and remain. And if the contractors feel like maybe they want to take one of those alternative routes, we're more than welcome to hear it because it is allowed in code.
I do have a question, Mayor. I do. Or maybe
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I actually have quite a few questions, but I just want to, on this one, clarify. So it is allowed, but is there confusion around how the code is written that people aren't sure that they could either do the firewall or the sprinkler? Is that a space where we could clarify to make it more clear for folks?
Mayor, through you. It is clear in code. We typically, I mean, in the past since I've started, we haven't had to be honest, a lot of 3 and 4 apartment, those types of units installed. But through my conversations with a few of the contractors, you know, they were the ones that like, hey, can we build these firewalls to separate these units? And I was like, yeah, that is allowed in code. So potentially we could go through and just make sure that is clear enough for everyone to understand 100%.
Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Witt. That was going to be my question, and so that's one of the things that I have heard a lot in my time on council is talking about this from people, and it's nice to know there haven't been that many 3 or 4 unit apartment buildings that have gone up, but that it is highlighted in the code, and maybe just making sure that that's clear, and that sounds great.
Yeah, Mayor, through you, I'll be honest, the building code, there's a lot of gray area in that thing, right? There's a lot of interpretation by myself, by contractors. So I'd rather have those conversations to make sure we're on the same page, because yeah, it's not, they're always working to improve it, but there's always going to be those gray areas. There's always going to be those situations where, you know, this doesn't apply to me, or, you know, what if this? So we try to work through those as best we can.
Councilor Doherty.
I like the firewall idea better because you don't have to worry about how cold it is outside. You don't have to worry about sprinkler systems freezing. So I'm glad that we have that option. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay.
Continue.
Okay, so that I'll make sure I'm clear on that. So those last ones were just the ones that weren't actually brought forward through our form that we had them fill out. Those were ones that were brought forward in our meeting. The ones that we actually got to, those ones that contractors brought forward. So I'll be clear on that to make sure. So these next ones are ones that our staff feel like we can make changes on. So one of the I'm gonna back up real quick. So those ones were the ones. These are the ones that contractors brought forward. My apologies. So this one specifically comes to the 327.1, which states that toilets and any fixture has to have clearances for. There's a few things. It's accessibility and use is the main reason for these. So this one specifically talks about toilets and whether they have to have from the center of the toilet to a wall or partition or another fixture has to have that 15 inches or 30 inches total in between. Like I said, it's an accessibility and a comfort thing. I can't tell you how, years ago when this was brought up, why 30 inches was, I guess at that time they felt like that was the amount that made most sense to them for the average. Typically that's where it comes up as the average human and their size. So I know we've had a few conversations with contractors on existing buildings. If you go into a house and you have a bathroom remodel, and 60 years ago when the house was built, maybe it didn't meet code, or, heaven forbid somebody did work in their house without a permit. And it wasn't, it was never inspected. So that does happen. I can tell you in our code, there is a code section in Chapter 1 which kind of covers most of the book, and it talks about additions, it talks about alterations, and it talks about change of use or repairs. And that basically says that any work that you're doing, once you start working on that section, whether you are doing a whole house remodel and you're pulling all of your insulation out, now that has to come up to code. So if you're not touching, if you're doing a bathroom remodel, that allows for you're right, the whole house doesn't have to come up to code, it's just that bathroom. So when contractors are going in and if they're just replacing a toilet, that actually doesn't require a permit. It doesn't require them to bring that toilet up to current code. If they're going in and they want to, say, take out a vanity, or they take out an existing sink and put in a new one, and they're moving that toilet, or if they're pulling all those fixtures out, that would require them to bring that up to code. And I know you guys have seen the houses, I've been in the houses, there are going to be restrictions sometimes. We try to work with contractors the most we can within the confines of the code. So this is one that we would recommend not changing. Again, I do my best, my staff does their best. If we run into situations like this or something similar, and we feel like we can work within the intent of the code rather than the straight out letter of the code, then we might be able to, find ways to make this work. But this code section specifically, we would recommend not changing. One code section we are wanting to change, and this would be a section in our city code, is currently if you have a bedroom or a sleeping area, as they call it, you have to provide a smoke alarm in each one of those. Where we get into a little bit of confusion is we have people submit for a new house and they have like 2 bedrooms on the main floor, and then they have this room that we're not sure of what it is, and they call it an office or they call it a gym, and they end up they most of the time they end up putting an egress window in there, so in the future they could easily use that as a bedroom and it's legal. What we don't see them is there's no requirement to put a smoke alarm in there. And what we're thinking is if we just require that those types of rooms just install a smoke alarm, then we clear up a lot of confusion. Sometimes we get hung up in our review process on some of that stuff just to get clarification. And if we know that they're going to put a smoke alarm in there, then we have no confusion. All rooms are covered it talks in there offices, bonus rooms, stuff like that. That I think it would speed up the process on reviews. And to be honest, they have wiring through that house anyways for smoke alarms, for carbon monoxide detectors, and they would just simply need to tie in that room. And that's something we would recommend that we would just have that in city code that would require them to put those smoke alarms in those types of rooms to clear things up.
Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Witt. Just curious, does our code require wired alarms? If a contractor was going to have battery-operated ones, is that clarified in here?
Mayor, through you. Yes, on all new construction, they all have to be wired. There are provisions if you are doing a remodel, if they don't have access to the ceiling, they can do the wireless ones that interconnect. They all have to be interconnected, so they're always talking to each other no matter what. But if it's a new construction like that, they do have to be wired, yes. This one, we've had a few discussions with contractors on. We've had a few contractors, you can see the suggestion down there. They talk about blower door tests. This was a code that was brought in quite a few years ago that they had an alternative method if they didn't want to choose either provide a res check or provide numbers on them following that code exactly, that a blower door test is a possibility for them to use. To be honest, we don't see them a lot. I know they supposedly amended it out when that came in because a lot of people saw it as an extra cost because you have to pay a contractor who does these or a third-party inspector to come in to do these tests. When it was brought in, the last I had heard, it was between $300 and $500 to get that blower door test. So I think that was the main reason why they decided not to. It is still in code. They can do it. And to be honest, if they choose to do it, then they can. It's not, like I said, it's not something we see very often. In fact, the 6.5 years I've been here, I've never seen anybody do it. We do see them a little bit more on a commercial side. Currently, the apartments out there on Bill Nye, they are going through a process with what they call a 5-star energy, and they have somebody that comes out, they check all their insulation, they do all that, and on some of their final inspections, they do one of these blower door tests because they want to have that 5-star energy rating right on their apartments to be able to rent them. So. The next one is lintels. So this is a big one that comes along with egress windows. Right, we've had, over the last 4 years, we've had a lot of egress windows installed with the rental housing ordinance. Most of them stay the same width and they just go down. That there is no requirement for anything on that. The big one is where if they increase the size of that existing window, now the code says if it's anything wider than 2 feet, they should have to provide a lintel. There's a little bit of code in there that calls out, the lintel stuff. What we would recommend is anything on that size, and what we have done in the past with some contractors is if it goes over that, we would just require an engineer to get involved to provide us with the calculations on that, on what kind of lintel they'd be putting in.
Lucas, could you, for those of us not in construction, tell me what a lintel is?
Yeah, Mayor, sorry. So a lintel is a structural piece. So if you have a window that's cut out, you have either a header that goes across that when you have all that weight that comes down, it provides structural integrity for where that opening is at, right? Because if you don't have studs and you have an opening, something needs to hold that weight. This is like a header, but it's used, most of the time you see them steel. So they'll provide a steel, what they call lintel, across that opening just to provide extra support for that weight in that opening. Thank you. You're welcome. This one there's currently no code on it. We've had some confusion in the past on whether rooftop units are being replaced if that requires a code. It does require, if it requires a permit. It does require permits on those. You see them replaced, on commercial mostly. We don't see a lot of rooftop units on housing. It's a lot of commercial projects, and we just want to provide clarification in the city code to make sure that we have something to go back on to where if an HVAC company comes in and replaces a rooftop unit, they know from our city code that they have to pull a permit on that. And that's all this is just to make sure everybody's understanding this does require code, because we've had some confusion in the past on that. This one, we recommend removal of this. This was one that was brought in last code cycle in our energy code. And it requires that they are only to install high efficacy lighting. So all lighting has to be LED or CLFs. So rather than having the old incandescent bulbs, they are requiring that all new houses have LEDs and CLFs. We feel like I feel like we shouldn't be regulating those things. If people want to, there are a number of reasons why incandescents, people still use them. Whether it's, I know I've talked to people that have migraine issues and they feel like the LEDs are too bright for them, so they can put in a yellow incandescent bulb and it works for them. So this just gives them the option, rather than just saying you have to put in all LEDs. You still have to have the option to put in incandescents, right? Everybody's gone to LEDs because it's cheaper, you're using less energy, but this still gives the option to, rather than forcing everybody to put in those types of lightings. This one's another energy code. You can see a trend here with our energy code. We're trying to go through. The big one was from our 2021 to our 2024. They really got restrictive on that. So this code talks about gas fireplaces. Currently, I'm going to assume if you have a gas fireplace, it has a pilot light in there. This is saying that you can't have a pilot light, that it needs to either be you can't have it on. Anytime you want to turn on your fireplace, you would have to turn on that pilot light. This, we feel like, is unnecessary. It's one that, again, they feel like if you don't have that pilot light on, you're using less gas, you're using less electricity. And for new gas fireplaces that are being brought in, from what I understand, the cost on those ones are a lot more expensive than just a traditional gas fireplace that does have that pilot light. So this is one we feel like If you want to install it, you can, but it would be an optional thing for people to be able to install those. This one is a code cleanup for us. It's one that we haven't done for quite some time, mainly because of the area we live in, because we have, not this year, but we have freezing temperatures most of the year. What this says is if you, in your house, if you put in a walk-in shower and you build that shower base, that we would come in, fill that whole thing with water for 2 minutes, and it's not supposed to drain any water out. That level has to stay the same. It's tough for us in the middle of winter because when we're doing these, they typically don't have heat on in those times. So the inside of the house is freezing. So for us to be able to tell them that they need to go in, fill this thing with water in the middle of winter, and then not only is that water in that pan going to freeze, but now they're running that water through their drains, and the drains could potentially freeze, bust, and we've got a huge mess. So we have not done this for quite some time. It's one that we feel like we just need to put in city code to clarify that that's what we've been doing. This is another one that we feel like we're wanting to remove. So the code itself is kind of encompassing of a lot of fixtures. What we're trying to clear up on this is the removal of accordion pipes. So what the code basically says is all piping where water runs through, all fixtures where water runs through is supposed to be a smooth surface to where you're not trapping hair or you're not trapping anything that falls through there and potentially clogs. A lot of times with those accordion, which you can get at any hardware store, they will put them in under their sinks because it's super easy, right? You don't have to hard pipe, you don't have to use glue or primer or anything like that. They literally just screw on. You can flex them to whatever shape you want. Those ones typically have ridges in them to where now we're collecting any sediment or anything like that I was talking about. And then we end up with more clogs, people end up with water damage, and we feel like this one we could easily remove. Specifically, we're talking about accordion pipes under sinks or anything like that. It's pretty rare where we might see a homeowner that tries to use one above a ceiling just because it's the ease of it. But then we end up with sagging. If water gets in there, it's going to sag, and then you're going to end up with a huge mess as well. So we feel like this one could be easily removed specifically for accordion flexible pipes. This is another one that's kind of area related. So currently on pipes coming that vent outside, they're required to have a protective over the top of them. You can see it's a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch. Screening is typically what we see. And the problem with that is the same thing. In the middle of winter, if you've got moisture coming through when you're venting, now that 1/4 inch square on each single one of those is collecting moisture, it freezes. Now we're blocking potential harmful air that's coming out of the house and it could come back in the house. So we're recommending removing that code. They're all alternative methods. You can see there it talks about potential. Let's see, where was that one at? Louvers or grills potentially could be an easier alternative, but we've seen those where they ice up as well, depending on the winter and where the house of where it's facing. You know, if we have an east or a west facing vent, a lot of times those will build up ice. And, you know, the big reason that they have these in here is to prevent debris from blowing in or potentially rodents from crawling in there, right? You might get a bird or something that makes a nest in that. Unfortunately, we can't prepare for all of those things that come in, but we do feel like in the wintertime, this could potentially, with that ice buildup, be a really harmful one. So we would recommend removing this out of code as well.
Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Witt. So I understand removing it, but we don't have any other solution to put on, or no recommendation that we'd want to have.
We're still looking into that. I'm hoping to have one when we come through and propose this stuff as an alternative solution. I'm still doing some research with different communities that have a similar winter that we do to see what they're doing as an alternative method. I do want to clear up something too. The one that is not, this does not apply to, and we'll make sure to include this in our code, is dryer vents, because those have enough heat that come out of them that they're melting that, and those have to have some kind of a flapper. You can't have that mesh on there anyways because lint's going to build up, so that flapper would be. But we are, to answer you, looking into an alternative solution for that to make sure like we don't get the debris or potential rodents coming in those. Okay.
Councilor O'Doherty.
I think we learned about owls getting into those vents when the Pilot Hill outhouse was being built, that it was
Sure.
had to do something to prevent owls from coming in, so I'd hate to have an owl in my vent.
I agree, yeah. That was my presentation. If you guys have any questions or concerns, please.
Thank you, Lucas. Councilors, any questions? Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Witt. I attended that meeting, and I thought it was really neat to see as many contractors show up and many other construction workers and whatnot. One thing, or an item a couple of them brought up, that next time you do something like that, if you could have like Mr. Taney's office and his staff there too, because they would really like to have them listen in on it also. But other than that, I thought it was a fantastic presentation that you gave, and the feedback I thought was very good.
Yeah, Mayor, through you, I appreciate that. Yeah, I do feel like we had our first meeting, I think a year before that, and we had maybe 12 people. So I feel like the 25 to 30 that we had was a huge improvement, and I feel like it should only gain traction as we continue to have these meetings.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a number of questions, and I probably should have asked these along the way. Sorry. Anybody else interrupt me if y'all have other ones too. One of the questions, I like the idea of that sort of certificate table rather than the online.
Res check.
Yes, thank you. How does the city of Cheyenne update that to make sure it still makes sense for the city? Is that just something we would look into yearly or bi-yearly?
Yeah, I've reached out to the building official over there just to kind of pick his brain on that too, to find out. Yeah, I would assume that as codes update, they're looking at that every single code cycle to make sure that they're not falling so far behind, because a lot of times that's the big issue is if we don't adopt codes as they come through, now you go from try to potentially make a leap from like a 2018 code to a 27 code, and now you're talking about huge changes. Sure. I know there are jurisdictions from our code classes that they're still on like a 97 code because I have no clue. Probably from feedback from contractors, from public on that stuff that they just don't want to change. So.
Did you have another question?
I do. I have a couple more. This one is more of a comment, if that's okay, Mayor.
Yes, we'll take questions and or comments.
Great, thank you. I have been the one who has pestered you frequently about the toilets. And I still would like to explore this because I understand on a main floor how we would definitely want that. But in these old houses, getting down to those basements anyway is not often like a nice wide venture down there. And so I still would like to explore some sort of an exception for that basement, for a basement in old houses. And I know you all say you have some leeway, but I think it makes contractors nervous sometimes, or even homeowners. The homeowner that I have in mind was like, we just didn't get a when we did this, because we were worried they would say no about having to move all of their plumbing to adjust. So I think if we could look at that and make it a little more concrete and have something that potentially could grandfather in these old homes in the basement toilets, I think that could be handy. So I have two more things.
Continue.
Thank you, sorry. You had talked about the idea of, kind of the online, you plug in your time for that. Do most contractors typically have a sense of how much time it would take for y'all to come in and inspect, or do you get such a wide range of people that doesn't necessarily work? Or could it be something where those who are experienced and you have that the knowledge that they know what's kind of what they're doing and how long everything takes, that something like similar to that could be set up and something different for other folks? I'm not sure. It just seems like it could be real slick for people.
Yeah, Mayor, through you, I would want to try and keep it fair for everybody. I understand contractors have way more knowledge than a lot of homeowners do. But I would want to make sure that we're giving the same opportunity for everybody. And I feel like I'm hopeful we're getting to the point where between making adjustments in our office for phone calls and making it clear to our contractors that that they're going through the right avenues to make sure, especially in our system, right? That's our whole goal, is to try and get everybody to go through our software to be able to schedule through that. I understand there's hiccups in that thing, and I know contractors voice their opinion in that in the meeting. There's times where they go in to schedule an inspection, and because there was a previous inspection that is there that blocks them, or maybe something wasn't filled out right, that they don't have that opportunity. And as long as they're, conveying that to us and calling us and saying, hey, I can't do this, we'll go in and say, all right, we'll clear that up. We can get it scheduled for you. It's a little bit different avenue than what we used to do. Everything used to be done through the phone. Everybody called in, scheduled an inspections that way. And now we have a new system, so we're doing our best to try and work through that system. And if there are different avenues to use that we feel like would be effective, we're open to it for sure.
Appreciate that. And I also recognize that any new system, you hate it for at least probably a year. Then you get used to it and everything gets faster. So that's good. To the point, though, of like managing kind of all of these calls that are coming in and the emails and that sort of thing. And this is more, I don't want to get in the weeds of staff, but more of a city manager question. Is there a space do we have enough staff support there to make sure that these things are moving along as quickly as we'd like them to get houses on the market? Or remodels done?
Honorable Mayor, if you're asking me if I believe we have a staffing issue in code administration with number of employees, I would tell you that I believe we absolutely do. I believe we're understaffed by at least one code inspector. Now that comes and goes with pressures of what's going on in the community. Sometimes it might be a low build year, or it might be a high build year. The university might have big projects that takes a lot of time or different pieces, but I absolutely do believe that we potentially do have a code administration or code inspector that we are short.
Great, thank you. That's it. I'm out.
And I'm just, along that lines, are you anticipating that as the new system gets up and running and you clear out maybe some of these bugs, that the contractors will be able to come in at some point, that it may accommodate pre-scheduling of inspection better, and that this is more getting the system up and rolling type of thing?
Mayor, yeah, I think that it's kind of what I brought up earlier. It's a couple of things. It's the system, but it's also making sure that we're doing our job to make sure we're getting back to contractors.
And I guess that was my other question. When a contractor is calling, or wants to make an appointment for inspection, do you already, in advance, have an idea due to permitting and things that have been submitted, kind of the length of time that an inspection might take? I was thinking of your analogy with a hair salon. And if you come in for a haircut, 1 hour. Haircut and color, 3 hours. Haircut, color, and nails, 4 hours. So you have an idea, if you have that service available at a salon, of what amount of time you're going to be there, and then the system books you for that amount of time. Do you see that we might have that potential in the future, that the system would be aware of the amount of permits, the amount being done, and would be able to estimate this is going to be a 3-hour job? Or does it require that you have a conversation in order to figure out whether it's 2-3 hours
Sure,
inspection?
Mayor. So for the most part, we have a pretty good idea. The one caveat to that I would say is, if say we go in and say every inspection's an hour just to make it easy. Now I feel like, because most of our inspections run about 30 minutes-ish, I feel like if we just block out an hour, now we're taking away those extra inspections from somebody else. I would say probably 90% of our residential inspections, if they're individual ones, we book about 30 minutes. We do have ones that take a lot longer because we're stacking. We might go in and look at framing and plumbing and electrical all at one time, and those take a little bit longer. And it depends on the house size too, because if we go into a 1,000 square foot house, we're going to blow through that a lot faster than, say, a 3,000 square foot house too. So there are a few things that I feel like we can't control and we don't always know. But I think that we, as a department, can clean things up to make it more efficient for contractors and homeowners.
Thank you. And it sounds like that is the goal of the department as
Correct.
well, to
Yes.
continue to work on this. And, okay, I just have one more question and then I'll turn it over. With all of these energy efficiency requirements, I just wanted to confirm that is federal guidelines. Is that correct? That comes out of the feds?
No, it's through the ICC is where these are all coming from.
Okay.
They might get directions from the Fed. I'm not sure on that, but they're the ones that are coming up with these codes. I feel like some of the ones that are overreaching a little bit maybe come from different areas than Wyoming, but to my knowledge, it's all just done through the International Code Council. They're the ones that come up with those.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor. And thanks again, Mr. Witt, for all this. And even, I think one contractor submitting 2 questions out of 500 packets sent out is progress. So keep it up, and I know the community really appreciates it. My one question is probably out of ignorance from not being in your profession. But, it seems like when we in your presentation, there's codes that aren't enforced. Is that just because there's things that are outdated, things have changed, they're from previous code cycles that as you do your code cleanup and revision and hear about it, you systematically do what you're doing now and say, hey, we should remove this? Is that the biggest reason?
Yeah, I would, Mayor, through you, I think most of it comes from either previous code cycles or, we just haven't updated them over the years, and it's something that we've realized that, hey, we need to clean these up, whether, I think I've said in some other meetings, we have contractors that come from Fort Collins or Cheyenne, and they say, hey, we don't require this, or we don't have to do this in Cheyenne, and they want something to back it up. They want city code, so we have something to reference rather than just saying that's just what we do. So we have something to back up, and that's kind of the bigger reason.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. And
Here, can I just,
What?
can I one more thing, add one more thing?
the Vice Mayor would like one more question.
Actually, it's not a question. I just wanted to, I realized in all that rambling, I didn't thank you for hosting this. I think it's really important for the community of contractors to be there and for you all to take the time. And so just wanted to thank you. So thanks, Mayor, for allowing that. Appreciate it.
And we do thank you. This is a lot of work, and to some of us, it's tedious, but you went through it really well, and I really appreciate it, and thank you.
Thank you.
So next, I would like to go to public comment. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? And if you could state your name for the record.
There we go. Council members, Mayor Mark Wade, my wife and I have electrical solutions here in town. I think this is year 16 that we're going on, so I've seen some different things. I really just want to say, yes, Lucas is doing a tremendous job involving contractors in their comments. I think everybody's being nice. I was at that meeting, and it was a firestorm of disgruntled contractors with this new program and these new things, as you can imagine with anything, but Lucas does a wonderful job. A couple quick things to Mr. Feaser's point. When I started being an electrician, when I started Electrical Solutions, John Hutchison's job was 3 people, and maybe 1 intern, but there's 3 people in that office taking phone calls, taking emails. So I think there is an understaffed part there. As far as the inspections part go, easily I can set up a temp service, and I need Bryce Lopez for 10 minutes. If I go through a final on the new coffee shop in West Laramie, I need a couple hours. So there's a difference, and it's hard. That makes it difficult. It makes it difficult for us to schedule things for service calls and projects, and it's got to be almost impossible from their side of things. So biggest thing is, I think what Lucas did and what Derek's doing and what these guys are doing for reaching out to the contractors for those things and understanding why these codes apply is the most important, because they do apply everywhere, but more importantly, you're taking it to a hometown stand and why we need it. And I think that makes the most sense. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your comments. Is there any further public comment on this agenda item? Good evening. If you could state your name for the record.
Good evening. I'm Diana Seebeck. Mayor and Council, I just wanted to reiterate that in these times of transitioning software issues, there's often lots of problems. Sometimes it goes smoothly, but you always have, every organization has this same kind of problem with interface. Some people are more skilled than others. Some people are younger than others. Some people are. So I just appreciate what the Mr. Witt is doing for that transition. But I just want to underscore that it's really important that it seems to me that phone calls and personal contact is sometimes really, really important. And things could be expedited. Perhaps somebody helps someone do the initial. There's a learning curve with everything. And some people are more tolerant of that than others. I'm married to one who's not very. So it's really important. We have people at all ages and stages, and it's to keep things moving. So I appreciate that and would hope there's lots more.
Thank you so much for your comments. Any further public comment on this agenda item? All right, seeing none, I'd like to thank, I see a number of contractors in the office. I'd like to thank you all for being present. And with no further public comment, I'll return to council. Council, is there any final comment? Councilor O'Doherty.
as a person that cares a lot about energy use and built a house with my own hands that does have R30 walls, our energy bill in the winter is only about $20 more than it is the rest of the year. So I hate to see us slide back on things that, yeah, you could save $1,000 or so when building, but then there's a whole lifetime, like when something is a solid wall with insulation, ours are 8-inch, but then energy costs are always going to go up. So I wonder if we could have the Energy Star, like, I just would hate to see people throw up a bunch of shoddy construction and it meets the code, but it's the absolute minimum they could do on insulation and things like that, where if it was built more solidly, if people know that their contractors are building to some level of energy efficiency, do we have anything like Energy Star? Or, and this is a question, isn't it, not a comment, sorry. Could that be reflected somehow, or people are just on their own and hope the contractor does a good job? Maybe the city manager knows the answer.
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Doherty, I think what you're talking about is the difference between the table and the res check of what is being requested there. And by my estimation of what's being proposed, if we create our City of Laramie specific table, that doesn't mean we're going to lose all those or have quote-unquote shoddy construction. What we're going to do is probably allow for a little lesser wall in our value. That's the difference in the decision that council will have to make, is if they're willing to allow for an R21 versus an R30. And as we talk about this, we understand, there's an affordability issue in our town too, about the cost of construction and the way the cost of construction adds to all development. That's really the balance that our council is going to have to make as we move through this. Can we find supporting documentation for different values, our values? I'm sure we possibly can, and provide that to make it feel more comfort. But that's just an idea around how to help get some of these homes in a different position.
Thank you, City Manager, for entertaining that question. Any final comments? Seeing none, we will go on to our next work session, staff presentation on the Forge Laramie Comprehensive Planning Effort. Mr. Gabatuller.
Yes, good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of council. I just wanted to add a little bit that to Mr. Witt's presentation, that the planning division actually is also planning a similar event for developers to come to and present questions on the Unified Development Code, which is our Bible. His is the IRC, IBC, ours is the UDC, and we're planning something similar. So I definitely commend him on kind of greasing the skids on doing that already twice. So we're going to do something similar in the spring. But I definitely appreciate the opportunity to provide a brief update on the Forge Laramie Comprehensive Planning effort this evening, alongside our team members from Clarion and Associates who are online with us this evening. Just as a little reminder, the Forge Laramie Comprehensive Plan is intended to serve as Laramie's roadmap for the next 20 years. The hope is that it will guide this body and future city council bodies in decisions relating to housing, transportation, economic development, land use, and a whole other array of topics that you all encounter week in and week out. So while the plan itself is not regulatory, it should play a critical role in shaping future policy decisions, given the community voice that is being captured in this effort. So since kicking off the Forge Laramie plan in June of last year, we've heavily focused on the community engagement aspect and data collection phases. And our goal has been to ensure that the plan does reflect the values and really creates a snapshot in time of where we are now and where community members of all sorts and agencies, organizations, where they see the city going in 20 years. To date, engagement efforts have included direct engagement efforts, public engagement that is. Those efforts have included public workshops, stakeholder interviews, targeted outreach to community partners, and most recently the Forge Exchange, which is of course open in the 103 grand space we're sharing with Laramie Main Street currently. I encourage you all to come visit us there. The Forge Exchange has allowed residents to interact with us in a manner that isn't in a city council setting, in a chambers, or at a public meeting. It's more of a inviting, well, not that this isn't inviting, but but it is pretty intimidating at times to come and speak at a podium in front of, you know, the whole city and you all. So it's kind of a more laid back approach where we are getting some good feedback so far, and we are also scheduling specific groups to come in while we are there as well. Some groups that we engaged with early on, school classes, retirement homes, and so forth. So we're lining those up, and we're excited to continue the engagement with those bodies, those folks. So we've been working closely with community partners as well through our steering committee to identify major themes to address in this planning process. Some of the topics we're consistently hearing from residents, and I'll definitely let my team member Leanne expand in it further during her presentation, include big surprise, right? Housing availability and choice, economic vitality, maintaining the community character, and one we are hearing quite a bit more about this time around, I feel like, is strengthening the partnership with all of our educational institutions in town, not just UW, but, you know, LCCC as well as Wyotech too. Another area we're beginning to explore more intentionally along those same lines is the youth engagement piece. Just had a meeting earlier today with an associate from the Hobbs School about getting some students involved in a capstone project that would directly survey the members of the educational institution I just mentioned and try to get a sense of where those students are, what could help keep those students here. What are students actually looking for in their first job placement, and so forth. So we're excited about that. So yeah, I mean, I won't go too much further into it. I know Leanne King has a presentation lined up for you all. So I'd like to turn it, through you, Mayor, I'd like to turn it over to Leanne for the presentation.
All right, we'll continue. Welcome, Leanne.
Welcome. Can you all hear me okay?
We can hear you fine.
Great. Thank you very much for carving out time at your meeting tonight, Mayor and council members. We're really happy to provide this update on the Forge Laramie process. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to think about the physical planning for your community and how it's shaped by the different aspirations and ideas that your members and community partners have. So glad to be here. We can move to the next slide. So I'm going to share a little bit about the process and the timeline where we are in terms of the status of the project. I'll share a summary of community engagement. So Philip did a great job of providing a good overview, and I'll just share a few more details related to that, and then spend some time talking about the technical foundations. So there's been a lot of work that we've been doing since we met with you all early in the project at our kickoff meetings, and so we're going to be updating you tonight with all of those details. And I should mention too that my colleague Maggie Squire is also on the meeting tonight. And then we'll top it off with next steps. So and you can go to the next slide. So the Forge Laramie process is, if you go to the next one, I think, there we go. We've got a 4-phase process. And again, it really kicked off last kind of late spring, early summer of last year. And we established the project, got the branding in place, did our kickoff meetings, met with everybody, held our interviews with stakeholders. And then phase 2, which was the kind of midsummer through fall, we did our first formal round of community engagement. And we did our technical analysis. So we looked at the plan, your currently adopted 2007 comprehensive plan, and created an assessment of that. I'll share the details of that. And we also prepared a report on your existing conditions, trends, and projections that we feel are really important to consider with respect to development of the comprehensive plan and the various topics that influence planning in your community. And we held several steering committee meetings along the way. I think we've held 3 total to date. And so we are now as of last month, we're in phase 3 of the plan. We have started that second round of engagement through the Forge Exchange, and again, I'll mention a little bit more about that shortly. And through that learning that we're going to get through the first round and the current second round that we're undertaking right now of engagement, plus those stakeholder interviews and the technical analysis, we will soon begin actually starting to put drafts of plan chapters together to share with the steering committee. So we'll be rolling up our sleeves here very soon to get going on development of the plan. And there'll be several meetings that we will work with the steering committee to evaluate and have them share ideas with us and reactions to the drafts. And then we will be moving forward with a public hearing draft later this year with the aim of trying to have this plan ready for adoption by the fall of 2026. Next slide. Yeah, so first I'll talk a little bit more about the engagement. If you can go to the next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, the stakeholder interviews that were conducted mostly during our kickoff meetings, but we had several that we did virtually after we had left the community. We had 48 different folks that we met with, and you can see the list there on the bottom of the slide of the different organizations and departments that we met with. If that was really helpful discussions to help us understand what are the issues that the community is facing and what are on the minds of people that are doing work related to kind of planning and land use planning in the community. We've also had several discussions with the steering committee to really get a good understanding of their perspectives, which are diverse and are great to be hearing from such a diversity of folks in the community about ideas and opportunities for the future of Laramie. And from those discussions, if you go to the next slide, we had a whole host of different topics that came out. And you can see the varied list here of all the different topic areas that are very much appropriate to be discussing as part of a comprehensive plan. So while we will probably be identifying some key priorities, and I think that Philip did a really great job of identifying some of those key ones that we're hearing a lot about that kind of rise to the top, there are also a lot of other issues that we want to be making sure the policy direction in the comprehensive plan are addressing and providing the right direction for moving forward through the next 20 years. Next slide. So again, 3 rounds of engagement. We have completed 1 that was June of last year, and through kind of several months after that. So there were all kinds of fun events that took place, the stakeholder interviews and the steering committee meetings. And then the Forge Exchange is happening now. And in the future, there'll be another round of engagement when there is a draft plan to share. And we will provide opportunities for residents to provide input on that public review draft prior to the adoption phase. Next slide. So I'm going to share a little bit more about what we heard through that first round of engagement. As you can see on the screen here, there were kind of 5 key areas that we identified as themes coming out of that engagement. Downtown vitality, safer connections, the outdoors identity, protecting nature and community spaces were all things that people really kind of talked about and had ideas about and wanted to encourage inclusion within the plan for those topics. And then we also have kind of a miscellaneous category that I'll share a little bit more about. You can see the statistics here on the right side of the slide that give you some information about who, how many people were and how many touch points we had with different members of the community as they provided these inputs. Next slide. So our first topic was downtown vitality. Let's see if we can, it might be taking a moment to get to the next slide. There we go. So if you can see here, there were kind of several types of activities that people undertook to provide their information. So there were mapping activities, but there were also kind of questions and open-ended comments that people could make. So these are summary slides of all of that information that was collected as part of the first round of engagement. So downtown vitality, very important. People want lively streets, full of shops, local events. And you can see there were a lot of posts about downtown vibrancy on the mapping activity. And that Laramie's residents are very interested in having more shopping opportunities and more entertainment venues to be able to go to, and they also value continued economic growth and the arts and music scene. So these are things that we want to keep in mind as we're looking at policy direction and how we can incentivize this type of development. Next slide. Safer connections, we got over 230 map comments related to providing safe crossings, dealing with broken sidewalks or disconnected bike routes. So a lot of different ideas from community members related to that. What we heard is that the city residents want more transportation options and safer streets, and they really value ongoing walkability and transit investments. So that's going to be important again in thinking about interconnectivity and also multimodal access throughout the city, looking to the future. Next slide. Outdoor identity, so think about trails, the river, mountains, access to all of those things as part of your daily life are very important. And your community loves the outdoors. You can see that high number there, 85% talking about this. University and recreation, access to those great amenities, and then you really value, again, that access to outdoor recreation and quality parks. So that's something that's a unique identifier for your community that we want to make sure is incorporated in this planning effort, and that more opportunities are thought about as we look to recreational opportunities ahead. And I know you all are going to be updating your Parks and Recreation Master Plan in the future, so this is learning that we can share along with your Parks and Rec folks as well. Next slide. Protecting nature, so thinking about your views, the health of the river, air quality, wildlife areas, several posts about those, and making sure that we're kind of development is not impacting those in a negative way. So your residents shared with us that they want more public and outdoor spaces. That's one way to both protect lands but also access them and provide access to those important areas, and that the city values preserved parks and balanced growth and protection. So all of these things are kind of balancing acts, and we want to achieve that balance through this updated plan. Next slide. So providing safe and welcoming places for community members of all ages was something that resonated with a lot of people. Family amenities, parks, gathering spaces, those are what people want. They want more public and outdoor spaces, better connected neighborhoods, and they really value diverse community programming that brings people together in community at various times of the year and in different ways. Next slide. And this was kind of our miscellaneous group here. So what we heard in addition to those other themes are comments about housing, parking, access, and other priorities ahead. So Laramie wants more housing. Obviously, you are not alone in that. Most communities that we work with throughout the nation are looking to address the housing challenges faced by our communities. You also want more transportation options for getting around your community. And your citizens have mentioned that you really value diverse housing choices, and thinking about the types of units that you want to be supporting for development in the future is an important consideration. Next slide. So as we mentioned, Forge Exchange is happening now. It's hosted in the Laramie Main Street space. There are posted times that you can go in and review the materials and interact with them and provide your feedback. There's some really fun and engaging activities there. And again, I think there's some scheduled group events that are happening in those spaces. It's available. It opened in mid-January. It's going to be open through the end of March. There's an open house coming up in just a little over a week on February 19th that anyone in the community is welcome to attend and come peruse the information. We have a revolving set of topics that we're collecting information on. First was hosted economic development, and then housing, and then downtown and commercial development. Those are some of the key things that we want to get a little bit more information and also share some education about those topics. Next slide. Technical foundations. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about the two work products that we have developed thus far in the process. So the 2007, which is your currently adopted comprehensive plan assessment, we want to kind of think about the themes, those the stakeholder themes and steering committee themes that I shared with you earlier, and how your current plan addresses those themes. So we want to, you have a current policy on the books. My, recommendation to communities I work with is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So we want to understand where you are today and what we really need to be focusing on in terms of a new policy direction or changed policy direction to address items that aren't appropriately addressed in your current plan. We also prepared the technical analysis, the existing conditions, trends, and projections report that I encourage people to go to the project website on the city's page. To get, if you're interested, there's a whole lot of data in this, and I'm going to walk through some key items here, but there's a lot more to look at if you'd like to understand where your community stands on a whole slate of different kind of topics related to growth and development in the community. Next slide. So on the 2007 plan assessment, the report documents our review of the goals and actions in the 2007 plan in relation to those planning themes that I shared earlier. And really what it describes is whether those themes were addressed in the plan. Maybe these are new conditions, and so they didn't need to be addressed. We didn't know to address them back when the 2007 plan was being developed. Also provides a brief synopsis of the policy direction contained in that plan, and some preliminary ideas on future policies and actions that could be taken to advance accomplishment to address that planning theme. So some early ideas that we wanted to document and put out there for particularly steering committee digestion as we start to move into working on the draft plan. Next slide. So in the Laramie 2007 comprehensive plan, you can see some excerpts here on the slide. There are several different chapters. The items listed on the left, the planning topics in red, those are kind of the key policy chapters that were the main focus for this 2007 plan assessment. Next slide. And this is just an excerpt from our plan assessment. There's a lot included within here, so I'd love to talk about all of it, but I didn't want to take up the whole meeting tonight. So we're going to provide just a brief overview, and I encourage you to take a look at the documents in detail to share with you kind of the learning and where we stand on assessments of your current plan. So this is an example that looks at pedestrian crossings, which was an important item that's come out of the community conversations to date. So we looked at how that was addressed in Chapter 10, Public Safety, and you can see the synopsis there. And then we have on the latter part of this table, progress along the policy track. So what do we think could be, how this is kind of establishing policy on this topic and what more could be done. So it's good establishment, but there's probably some new projects and ideas that can be brought to bear with respect to pedestrian crossings to include in the new plan. Next slide. So now I'm going to move over to the data report, the existing conditions, trends, and projections report. So there's a lot of content in here, as I mentioned. It's really a point-in-time reference. So, we have to use available data at the time. So it is forward-looking in that we do look at projections, but it's kind of point-in-time reference with respect to census and other data that we're gathering. But it really serves to provide a common knowledge base. So it helps us to understand what the true conditions are based on what the data is telling us. Next slide. There were 6 organizing topics that we put all of this information under. So you can see those on the slide here: community demographics, so about the folks in your community, housing, economic development, land use and development, quality of life, natural resources, and hazards. And I'm going to give you just a taste of each of these in this presentation. But again, there's a whole lot more data to be looking at and using for those that are interested. Next slide. So first off, it's important to look at where the city's population is today, how it's projected to grow, and what that looks like in relationship to neighboring jurisdictions. So Laramie is projected to have an increase of population by 10%, or 3,300 people, through 2040, and that's according to the state of Wyoming, which actually outpaces state growth and Albany County, or projected to outpace state growth and Albany County growth. So that's exciting to see, but it's still not kind of rampant growth that you might see in some Front Range communities. So it's a little more balanced in other areas. Next slide. This is a list of the other types of demographic information that are included within the report. So you can see their race and ethnicity, migration patterns, age composition, household income, educational attainment, and poverty status. Those are all important things that we want to be looking at in this effort. Next slide. Housing. A lot of content here on your housing conditions within the community. One thing that we wanted to share with you tonight is that it's interesting to look at kind of housing construction over the decades, and there's definitely been a decline in production over time that you can see there on the table on the right. Next slide. We also have been looking at housing costs, and no surprise to anyone, they are rising. They increased by more than 50% since 2013, and the median home price a couple of years ago was just a little over $300,000. And you can see the change in the 10-year period between 2013 and 2023 for Laramie and Wyoming in the table to the right. And I just want to call out, there were a lot more $150,000 to $200,000 houses that were kind of no longer available once we got to 2023. That was a 72% reduction. And very notably, we have a very high kind of increase in properties that are $300,000 to $500,000, and then more notably $500,000 and up. So housing prices are definitely increasing. Not to say we don't want higher valued homes, but we want to make sure that we also have housing that's affordable to households that don't have incomes that can afford those higher priced units. Next slide. And this is the list of the other types of data that are included and trends that are shown in the report to help us build a picture of the conditions within the community with respect to housing. Next slide. We also looked at job growth and among peers, so looking at communities that we felt like were good peer communities. No two communities are exactly the same, but there are a lot that aligns Laramie with these other communities from across mostly the Mountain West, but some in kind of the Pacific Northwest as well. So Laramie's job growth between 2019 and 24 was about in the middle of its peer communities, but projected job growth is actually ahead of many of them. So that's kind of exciting to hear and see, and we want to be supporting that through this comprehensive plan update process. Next slide. And these are the other types of information that are included within that report, looking at employment and wages, projected job growth, jobs by industry. You can see the list there. Next slide. We also looked at the kind of development and land use related statistics as well. So this is an interesting graphic that shows the various types of land uses that are supported within your currently adopted comprehensive plan on the future land use map. And as you can see, it's actually, I would say, more diverse than most communities that we work with in terms of the types of different units and types of land uses that are recommended and allowed across the community's planning area. And if you go to the next slide, you can see how these various land uses apply across the landscape in the city. This is the currently adopted future land use map and the current comprehensive plan. We also want to note that the growth area plan is also an important part of this planning effort, and we will be looking not only within the city's current corporate limits for how future land use might need to be changed to support some of the policy ideas and discussions during this process, but also within the larger planning area, particularly that growth area plan boundary that is included in that adopted plan with the Albany County. Next slide. And here's a list of all of the other types of land use and development information that are included within the report. A lot of good information here that we're going to be leveraging through this process. Next slide. Quality of life. We also have a section that's focused on this. So there's information about the arts and culture, parks and recreation, pathways and trails, education, and emergency services. So good information there to be taking a look at. Next slide. And when we look to kind of natural resources and protection, one item that's very much kind of top of mind for us are the Casper aquifer limits and growth to the east, and making sure that we continue to manage growth so that we can preserve and protect that important water resource that the aquifer provides to the city. Next slide. And these are some of the other natural resources and hazards information that are included within that technical report. Next slide. So that wraps up our summary of community engagement that's been conducted and that's ongoing, and the technical conditions. And so now, if you go to the next slide, we'll talk about what are we going to be doing from here moving forward. So the Forge Exchange, again in the Laramie Main Street office in downtown, will be open and available and taking your inputs through the end of March on the topics that I mentioned earlier. And through the capturing of that information is really going to help us understand the direction that we want to be heading with, and will help inform the project team and the steering committee in thinking about the different policy options available to be incorporating in the plan moving forward. And so here very soon we are going to get in full mode in terms of plan drafting and sharing those drafts with the steering committee and having conversations about those ideas and starting to put the plan into shape so that we'll be in a good position to be sharing a public review draft of the plan later this summer. And I believe that wraps up our presentation. Happy to take any questions or comments that you might have.
Thank you, Leanne. Councilors, questions and or comments? Councilor Freed.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Leanne, for that presentation. Not a ton of questions come to my mind as we look at all the work that you and our planning department is doing on this. So I just wanted to say thanks for all your work so far. And I know the public engagement is being talked about in our community. I hear about it. So I know you guys are really making a concerted effort to get out there and hear what folks are saying, and really appreciate it. And I think this is really important. So thanks for your time and your effort and the dedication to our community.
Great, thank you. I got to say that Philip and Emma and Derek and Joseph are great to work with on public engagement. They really make it fun.
They really do. Councilor O'Doherty.
I visited the spot downtown, and it's very creative and clever, and I'm very proud of what you all have done. And it looks like we have a lot of homework to read this report. And it occurs to me like the hospital does like community needs assessment, and the community service block grant board, we have to present things. So it looks like you've already compiled a lot of information. So this is all there if I just click on the report, right?
That's right.
So we can share this widely with our community. Thank you.
Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Leanne, for the presentation. As we were going through the slides, I think it was really cool just how our city staff and all of the project managers, et cetera, all kind of coalesced into like really rounding out like what this community could look like, gaining the necessary input, all of that kind of thing. Like I serve on ACTA, and so while Forge is talking about transportation, we have this beautiful new transportation plan, and so to have that all kind of coalesce together, I think is just really masterful, and so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Leanne. I just wanted to comment how this plan already, how it ties into our goals that we set last year and this year. So it seems like what the community wants is what we're trying to accomplish. So we appreciate the efforts, and I'm glad to see that too. So thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilor Lockhart, and I agree with that assessment. I think that we have really worked hard for a number of years now on community engagement, and it doesn't happen overnight. And I appreciate the presentation. And I love some of the slides. It tells us how long this has been going on, that during last year, we were at the farmers market, we were at Pride Fest. I happened to be stationed right next door to planning, and there were lines of people at planning to look at stuff and interact with the maps, and no one there for council. So that was kind of interesting. That was fun. And then to be at Freedom Has a Birthday, I mean, that's a lot of interaction, and there are a lot of people there. And I think the thing that kept that line there was it was so interactive that there was something for people to do, and they just wanted to look at the maps and put little things there. And I also had the privilege of going to the Forge display last week, and it was fabulous. It was just so creative and interesting. I thought the signs were, the information was easy to read. The interactive activities were fun. While I was there, another person came in, and while that person was there, two of our West Side residents came in. So just in a 30-minute period, there were four of us kind of interacting, and Emma was there, and it was a fun experience to go down there and have some input and to interact with people. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
All right. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, back to council. Any final comments? Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, this just crossed my mind through the presentations we've had tonight. This is more of a comment for our city manager, but it really feels like the way that our community is interacting with city staff and council and making their voice heard is we just have to provide as many opportunities as possible, and that's what we're doing. And so it's really cool to see that you know your department heads and their staff are really getting out there, and all you can do is try to put as many opportunities out for them to engage, and we'll continue to do that. But it's a great thing.
Thank you. Councilor O'Doherty.
I just wanted to say this so I don't forget. It seems like we should maybe involve the Youth Council in this project, because we hope that this is their future we're talking about.
Yeah, that might be a great project. We don't happen to have a representative from there tonight, but maybe Nancy, you could pass that on to them, that we invite them to participate in this. All right. And without further ado, we will go on to our last work session. What? Councilor Freed, are you ready?
Yes, Mayor. I would make a motion to suspend the rules to allow Director Wade to facilitate the council discussion on the Civic Sense work session, and to proceed after council discussion with normal rules of procedure.
Second.
I have a motion from Freed and a second from Richardson. This is a motion to suspend rules. It requires 2/3 vote, and we happen to be 2/3 of the council. And it does not, there's no discussion or amendments. So, City Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Bowling, absent. Freed.
Yes.
Lockhart.
Yes.
Newman, absent. O'Doherty.
Yes.
Shumway, absent. Vigil.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes.
And Cumby.
Yes.
That's 6 yeses, 0 nos, and 3 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. That motion passes. Director Wade, welcome. And we turn it over to your facilitation. Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. Boy, I feel pretty honored to follow all the folks tonight who are out building the best community I could possibly imagine. And hopefully the work that we do together this evening is going to just lay the foundation for even more of that in the future. Just to attend to a technical matter before we get started, the City Clerk is going to allow me to share my screen so that I can do a little bit more interactive presentation this evening. All right, cool. Let's see if it works. Great. So the idea behind this evening and the work sessions that follow is to really start to reset the stage and how we talk about our shared civic sense. Realizing that maybe transparency is something more than a one-time thing, that maybe it's a little bit more of a journey, and maybe it's a little bit more customized to the community that we live in, and it requires things that maybe even 5 years ago none of us would have thought about. But with a changing landscape and people speaking up more and more about what they want, that we have to engage in these things really sincerely. And so, you know, some of the traditional ways that we've done that, I mean, we often get to the right decision, but we stumble, and I think that's part of the process. And I wonder if sometimes we get it all wrong in terms of how we talk about these things. And so I am utterly grateful that you're allowing me this experiment where we're going to try to break it down, do it differently, see what we learn, and then see if we like what we learned or what we want to do differently. So let's start the journey tonight. I've got just a really quick presentation to tell the story, and then we're going to talk to each other about where we're going to let this work lead us. But first, some foundation. So we're going to start making sense of finances in a little bit different way, moving away from that traditional model of dumping mountains of information. We do that a lot as government, right? And there's some good reason for that. This evening, we've seen some really good reasons for that. But on the other side of the equation, or as a member of the public, how does that feel? Right? And those are the questions that we really need to ask, and why engaging in different ways is super important to us. We also think that this work is really relevant and timely. Of course, the legislature kicked off their budget session this week. You all will be considering the city's next budget in just a few months. And we should treat that seriously and make sure that you have the information you need as decision makers. And really, what we're doing is we're building our community with our common sense, quite literally, right? Government does functions for the people with resources of the people. It's a really different model than in a private business, right? Those common resources, those common sense, are essential for delivering sustainable services. And those sustainability doesn't just happen, you guys. It's not just we wish it and it comes true. I really wish that's how it worked with money. But really, it's more about effort and attention and alignment with community priorities and plans. And we've seen a lot of that this evening, and it's really worthy work. And we have to engage about and plan for these finances in a meaningful way to get the most out of them, or maybe to achieve what maybe is a pipe dream right now, right? Like a fully built out transit infrastructure. How do you get to places like that? It's because people have ideas, they execute, they stay the course, and they're able to see those visions and make those visions a reality. But those successful visions are grounded in good financial decisions. Our common resources influence how our community grows. We saw that with the plan tonight. Once we understand what our finances actually look like, what our community wants, and what our opportunities are, and notice I said opportunities, not limitations, because I do think it's about how you approach it, the city staff and the council can work together to facilitate that growth in a way that best suits us, recognizing the importance of our town being a great place to live, work, and play. But it's the holistic picture, right? And money, those resources, are really the underpinning of everything you've seen tonight, right? The life-saving awards, the code administration, the building permits, the planning, all of that happens because of these resources that are entrusted to us. And our decisions, the way we use our common sense, affects the quality of life for our residents, right? I mean, it's a pretty big job. And what we do has a direct impact on our community. We've seen a lot of that with surface water drainage, have we not? The user fees and taxes that our community members pay, the revenue we get from other sources, they're basic mechanisms for how we deliver sources, how our services, our public safety, reliable, safe infrastructure, quality of life amenities like parks and recreation. You can't divorce them from what allows them to occur. But we only talk about these things once a year, right? And like the poor little piggy bank here, we pile it all up, and then it's hard to get it in the right equation. And as policymakers, I'm sure it feels that way from your standpoint too. And I think it's time for a change in approach, and this is really what we're going to start with this work session series, so that we edge a little bit closer to what I would call true transparency. Maybe moving away from the transparency of the 1980s, the dump and run, to like what transparency looks like in 2026, which is real engagement, real willingness to be vulnerable with each other, real sincerity about what matters to our community. Recognizing that the way we present budget and talk about finance can be a little intimidating. It's maybe not intimidating if you have a business or you have some finance background, but if you don't, it probably feels like a mountain, and that's not transparent. It's easy to get lost in that process, all the requests, all the capital, right? What are we actually doing? What's the big picture look like? And we don't always talk about in those processes what actually matters most to people. We talk about it in that really structured format that we're all used to, and there's value in that. And that information needs to be out there circulating. But is that actually what we talk about in work sessions, or should we tailor those more? And finally, it's really easy to get stuck in the formal. And that's one of the reasons why we talked about the suspension of rules, just to allow for a little bit more engagement when we get to discussion, so that we can just let go a little bit and say, okay, we're all in this together, but what do we actually want? And be able to talk about that in a little bit more open way. So we start to lay down these different routes together, and you guys are going to be the ones that chart the course on this journey. And so when I initially was discussing this idea with the city manager, my thought was I'd come in and I'd start somewhere. But the closer I got to starting, the more I realized that was the wrong approach. And that really what I should do is trust the foundation of trust that's already laid between us, and ask you where we began this journey. Because that's an example of what democracy in action looks like, right? And I'm pretty sure that's what we've all signed up to do. Just that process can be a little messy. So together we're going to build a different, not maybe a different foundation, but a different way that we talk about these things in the community, and we'll build out from there. So if we look at the road forward, at each work session this spring, leading up to our budget work session series, you're going to hear from me. No more than 10 minutes of content and about 10 minutes of discussion, always at the end. And so it'll kind of be a nice like debriefing, a different format from maybe what you're seeing in most of the work session, which hopefully is nice for you. What I'll commit to you is that I'll do my best to make it easy to understand. You may want to talk about something complicated, we'll totally go there, but I'll do my best to make it as easy to digest as possible and as engaging as I possibly can. It'll be relevant because the topics are going to come from you, and you are our elected policymakers. And so I take you as a pretty good barometer for what is important to our community. And finally, hopefully, we do something impactful with this work. And so whether it's just you having more information as decision makers, or whether it's actually us continuing this work in different ways, doing more public engagement, being out in a different way in the community with these financial tidbits, I'm all about it. I say, let's see what we learn together, and let's try to put this to best use for our community. So that's all the storyboard that I want to lay out for the evening. And at this point, it's all about the discussion, about where we start this conversation, what you think feels most relevant to you, or community members, or both.
Oh, that's right, sorry. You just I'm asking you if I can talk. Just in thinking about this and thinking about the public, I almost wonder if going down to like the real basics of like what are our funds and what are they used for? Because I think people get confused about what goes into where, what's the general, what is this one, and I think it's just could, I don't know, to me feels like a starting spot, like a real.
Awesome.
Thank you, Director Wade. How about like, what do you guys get the most phone calls on from the community? What are their questions? Or are they calling you? No, or emailing?
Yeah, actually, most people, they don't think about finance being the underpinning. They would call the policy, they would call the service delivering unit, right? So they might think we're not appropriately staffed and like building permitting.
Right.
That's the complaint you would get. You wouldn't get the complaint about, tell me why there aren't enough financial resources to solve this problem. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if we can look at some of the data. The city rolled out some great financial transparency tools last year. Mm-hmm. And is there a way to share that, maybe not in such a report format, but about what sort of interactions we're getting, or are we seeing people really interested in the general fund, if there's a way to collect that data. Because that's maybe more to Councilor Lockhart's point. What are people talking to city staff about? And that would just be a really easy way to pull. We had 200 interactions in the month of December, or when tax season came up, and I think that might be able to help tailor how we get them information.
I just want to piggyback on what the Vice Mayor said, and it was super helpful to me, and I think it would be to others, and that is to have a sense of the structure. So to look at what are the funds, their names, where do those funds come from, and what do those funds do? And kind of like this chart, where does it come from into that fund, where does it go out? And it gives people, and I think it's, and I'm still trying to kind of wrap myself around it, is what goes into general, what goes into enterprise, what goes into this, and to start to see the structure. And to me, I picture it, I'm a constructivist, so I see it more as blocks and building blocks. So, oops, sorry, I started. Put your hand down. Put your hand down.
I remember maybe it was a year ago you did something like that with us, and 4 of us were brand new at it. So to do that again would be wonderful. Okay. Because I do remember, because we were all wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and tried to take it all in, and some of that still escapes me. So I'd love to see that again, and I think the public would love that too.
Awesome.
Yeah, and your point, I think, Director Wade, that transparency isn't a one-time thing. I mean, how many new people did we have in the chambers tonight? They might not have stayed until right now, but even if we've talked about it 4 times, but even if we've talked about it 4 times in one council year, we still, any opportunity, again, I think, to talk about it, I don't think is too much. And I think, we also hear, I think this is, when I think of this and when I heard your presentation, I thought of how do we tell the story of our community in a way that provides all the context to people that are supportive, or people who are criticizing why we have a staff the size that we do, or whatever. But, we're never going to maybe win those people over, or maybe we could if we can tell the story of where this money comes from, how we generate it, how much do we make in grants, how much staff time we put into securing grants that have supported all these amazing things in our community. So I don't know, that just gets my mind spinning on how we tell that. So I'm just thinking out loud now.
I think there's actually a really good story to tell for each fund, and maybe engaging with it in that way would be memorable, meaning it's easy, as you all are out there in the community, to resurrect that information from a file in your brain and use it, because that's the thing, right? When you're engaging in this way, we want you, members of the public, whoever's watching, to be able to do that in the future when you need that information. So I appreciate that.
And I do think that having that structure, articulating that structure, representing it visually, and getting it out to people not once, but 4 times a year, repeatedly, that once you have that in your mind, you can start to understand these more finer details that we deal with every day, every time we come to council. And I think for us to emphasize that foundation will help people understand some of those finer budgetary discussions that we have.
The reality is, most people I know elected us to do the homework and don't want to sit there and go through city finances to check our work. So, and I know we've experienced a lot of people that choose to live under a rock. Lately, I've been wanting to live under a rock, but I also feel like that community finance report that I was just gushing about last week or the week before, to me, that tells me the whole story. Like, anything you want to know about it, here it is. To me, that was so clear, but then I am a scientist, so maybe that's my perspective. But I'm not a budget person. I thought that was a beautiful thing, and maybe if we gave that out in chunks, we could express it. But I also think that it's such a small proportion of the population that pays attention. Like only 60% of people vote, even fewer vote in the primary or in special elections. So to try to get people, when there's so many other distractions or I mean, I think Jen is really interesting, but there's a lot of other interesting things going on, that to expect people to really focus on this is kind of nerdy of us, I would say.
Yeah, I thought a lot about that, and it only matters when we have to ask for something, right?
Yeah.
When we're thinking about asking people to approve taxes, and so people don't care until they do, is what our budget advisory committee members have told us, and I believe that that's truth. And so to be on their radar with information, because we know that those asks are coming. I mean, we live in a state where we frequently vote on local taxes. I think it is I agree with you that it's nerdy of us, and I am totally a nerd. But there's also a practical way in which if we don't do it, we suffer. And I think we've seen a little bit of that in the last year.
So I think Councilor O'Doherty brings up, kind of the point. I think what you're asking is, who is this for? Is it for us or for the public? Both. And you bring up the point that it's not important to most people until it is. So maybe by it being presented to us in our public forum, those that are interested get it, but mostly we begin to develop a better comprehension of the bigger picture, and it empowers us to interact knowledgeably with our constituents as the moments when they do care come up. We've got that whole foundation, and maybe we've brought some people in from the public because it's presented in a different way, that we expand the number of people in the public taking an active interest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oops. So one other thing, and this may be getting a little too in the weeds, but sometimes I think people wonder, like, why are we making decisions, or why are we putting money into something? So what is our decision process to invest in certain things? Like, what is this, how far back did it go that we built the north tank? And when do we decide to hire another person in code enforcement? And again, I don't want to get too in the weeds, but those are the questions I think that some of us get, like, why are you putting your money in that? And so what does it look like as staff and as a council for us to make those decisions monetarily, and how do you all start it at the staff side? Because I don't know where it starts necessarily. I mean, I have an idea, but yeah.
Yeah, those are great questions.
In regards to, I'll follow up what the mayor said just now and then earlier, simplifying, if we had a laminate of all the funds that we could keep in our notebook, and just like, yep. You could just, here's where it is. Just totally. A generic laminate, this is this fund, this is this fund, this is this fund, where it comes from, what it supplies. It wouldn't just do me or the public wonders, it would do me wonders. It's just a reference sheet, cheat sheet, so. Thank you.
I like that idea.
And I think that's the kind of stuff that may come out of this, right? Like, we may not get to the public yet. We're going to get to them. Yeah. But if it starts with, hey, let's make sure that there's a resource that isn't a 300-page book for our new council members, so they really understand, okay, the general fund does this. This is where it gets its money. This is about how it spends its money from a percentage standpoint. That would probably help you out a lot.
A lot.
I would want that. And I wouldn't want to have to go through a 300-page book to find it, even though it's probably in there. Well, I think it's in there.
Somewhere.
In the build on that, I'm like really getting into the weeds of the community involvement part, but at the farmer's market, sometimes I'm like, boy, it would really be nice to have something more than, or change it up every week. And it would be really nice if like during those farmer's markets every week, maybe it was a new, or maybe all of them were there. Like, did you know that this fund does whatever and it pays for your XYZ? I don't know, just to have these continual outreach opportunities to share information about the budget too.
Yeah. I actually had a thought listening to Forge Laramie out there. I was like, man, we could be at the farmer's market with like jars and people could add. We could give everyone fake nickels and they could add where they want, like where they think money should be spent. And at the end of the summer, you'd have like a really cool, like this is what the community, and you'd get to talk to people about it, right? So I totally agree.
I love that idea. Yeah, and one of the things that, I've heard my whole time in Laramie is roads and streets and, and it seems like when it comes down to it, maybe it's a certain group of people, but how can we tell a story, which I think, Director Webb does such a good job up here, but trying to find other ways to explain how the pie is split up and how long it's taken in some of these things to get to completion, or a project, on 3rd Street that's not necessarily ours, it's YDOT, but, all the things in there. I think we're already doing that, but trying to find new ways to say it. And I guess to Councilor Doherty's point, my thought would be, I agree that there is a really awesome report, and if people want to be diligent, they can go do it. But in this thinking, where do we start the conversation? Worst case scenario is we might find a new creative way to share information, or we all learn something new. That's the worst case. Best case is we've educated more members of the public or heard really good ideas. So, without the expense of taking hours and hours and hours of our time and our staff's valuable time, I think hopefully we can get something cool.
Yeah. Okay, I sense like a dying down, which isn't honoring this idea of keeping this short. I believe Councilmember Lockhart asked, where do you get the most calls about? If I would have chosen where to start tonight, I would have started with enterprise funds because of surface water drainage. That's the truth of it. I think in terms of community and some of the decisions the council will need to consider in the next year regarding rates and those other utilities, that's exactly where I would have started. But I don't think that would have been the right place. And so this is a really good example of how that would have been wrong, but it would have been right at the same time, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to take this next step of keeping it high level, and then when we get done with the next work session, we're going to see where we want to go next. And that gives you guys time. So every work session, we're going to discuss a little and say, where do we go next? And so I hope we have some fun with this. And Brandon is going to test us. Go ahead.
If I could, before Brandon goes, it's refreshing to hear your discussion tonight and for your allowance to have this somewhat informality as Jen led the course. As Jen was charting the idea behind coming through with this civic sense, it was important for us to really get it down to where it's digestible nuggets. And all too often I've sat in large budget meetings, and about 12 minutes into them, sometimes the council members just aren't here anymore. It's just so much information. And so what we believe we're going to do is we're going to empower you guys as you're out in the community to be able to talk fluently and easily about the budget. And one of the things that you brought up about, hey, what goes into the general fund revenue? How is it accumulated? Where does it go? That's some stuff that we've talked about. So it's refreshing to Jen and I believe, I won't talk for Jen, that we have a pulse for where you guys would like to be, and we're really going to honor that. And it's just a blessing for us to have Jen on our team. And I will say one thing, she pointed out something that I was feeling bad about, is that I absolutely do believe we're understaffed, but I will say that that doesn't mean that that's where I believe the best expenditure of our resources are going to be in code administration, right? We have a very serious job to do over the next 6 months to get our budget ready, and although I may believe that, that's not a guarantee that's our best expenditure of funds at this point. And we have to really weigh all that out because they are limited. They are not unlimited, and we have a lot of work to do. So I appreciate you.
Thank you, City Manager Fieser. Okay, so to close this out and maybe also help City Manager Fieser and I test this polling tool that we're going to be using out in the community to really try to do more of that engagement and get a sense of what people want from the city, we are going to pass out this QR code to you. You're going to have it. Awesome. And we're going to roast the budget book for just 1 minute because the budget book is going to get rebirthed this year for the first time since 2019. And so we're going to have you scan that QR code and answer one question to help me in this rebirthing process.
Just enter a 4-digit code. Do we know what that is?
Brandon's got to give it to you.
We sure do. It is VFXA.
I didn't hear that, and I'm not ready for it.
Okay.
I can't QR code. My arm isn't long enough.
Yeah, I know it's a little hard to see, but there are QR codes up there.
They're so big, though, I can't get it in
open the
my
budget book.
camera.
VFXA, yeah.
What is it? FX what?
V F. Yeah.
Oh, mine's not opening.
I feel like I
What
took
the
the wrong
heck?
letters. Maybe Brennan should tell us again.
So you are being guinea pigs, and we appreciate it.
Laramie budget book. I need to open this up so I can really dig in here.
You want everybody in on this?
I'm not even able to get in yet.
If you can't get in, don't worry about it at all. But if you can get in, we'd love you to answer what you hate about that book. I have the things I hate about it. They're going to remain private. But if you could let me know.
And say the code again.
VFXA.
V
V is in vegetable.
Victor.
V
Yes.
F
Frank.
X. Excalibur. I don't.
A. Okay.
X-ray.
I can sign any of our digital stuff. Why can't I find our budget book?
Knee jerk, right? Thank you. Knee jerk from your experiences as council members. It's too long. The text is too small. It's complicated. Okay. Thank you guys so much. Do we have it?
What we're going to say. Yeah, we knew what we were going to say. Dude, I remember when they first started this, I started reading it, and then like at night, just still going.
That's why the budget brief is so handy.
Should we exit or do we stay in there?
Is that it?
You should see the results.
Yeah.
Do we have any more? Or is it just one question?
Just that question.
It's just the one question. Yep.
Well, it seems like we could have just asked that rather than.
Well,
do
but
all
we
of this.
need to test our technology. Oh, yeah, it is complicated. The long, complicated path to Mordor is what it feels like.
What's the?
So.
I don't know.
It parses each word, so.
So that's a good reminder that we have to tell people.
So the came in top.
Don't use articles anymore.
I didn't use any. I just said long, complicated.
So, Mayor Cumby, just to the council, I mean, thank you for going on this journey with me, and thank you for helping us test our technology. We did just learn something that we need to make sure we remember to tell people, which is to combine your words together, or the polling looks like this. And so I appreciate you very much, and Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Director. That was a great start. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? I'll return to council. Council, any comments on this agenda item? I thought it was great. I thought it was interesting. I have this thing with barcodes, so
Well, yeah.
please forgive me.
Maybe a little too big for where we're sitting.
Well, you had to, like, put it out there. Anyway, I appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into this presentation. So, councilors, updates. Councilor Vigil, I'm going to start with you since you have Councilor Bowling's updates.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I can go first. I had a really good meeting last week with our commission chair for the Human Rights and Relations Commission, and so that felt good. And we'll be having a work session on March 11th. And then ACTA is also coming up here in the next week or so. And then for Councilor Bowling's updates, he says, "Thank you, Honorable Mayor." My only board and commission update is that the Laramie Police Advisory Board met last Tuesday for a training. We had a presentation from an officer who is completing and very nearly complete with the Drug Recognition Expert Program that uses a variety of different metrics to help determine what type of controlled substance a person may or may not be on, and then that officer has the ability to also make a medical call if necessary, even if it conflicts with the arresting officer's assessment. It's very interesting, and I am happy to know that some, if not many, of our talented police officers are receiving this training. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Behill. Councilor O'Doherty.
Can I wait a minute so I can find my notes?
Yes, you may. Councilor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor. The Parks, Streets, and Rec Board has had 8 interviews for 4 positions to fill the board last Friday and yesterday, and so we're getting close to having those appointees come before council. And then tomorrow, and that was Councilor Bowling and the mayor helped me out with that, so thank you, and to Director Bork for scheduling all those. A lot of coordination. And then I'm heading to Cheyenne with the mayor tomorrow for the WHAM Winter Workshop, and I believe our city clerk, maybe our city manager. Yeah, a whole bunch of cool people. So we'll be over in Cheyenne getting to, I guess, reflect our values from Laramie and learn a little bit, and that's all I got.
Thank you. Councilor Lockhart.
Well, you know what I've been doing, so I have.
Oh, you've been a busy guy.
I appreciate you guys allowing me to miss last week. And then yesterday I couldn't make the planning commission meeting, but I'm here tonight, so let's get back on track. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the effort I know it took for you to be here tonight. Much appreciated. Vice Mayor?
I'm excited to get over there at some point here. I don't know when, but we'll get there. I was just looking back, and I think the only thing that I have participated in since last time was the 20 under 40 awards that our counselor was recognized at, and Officer Asen Hutchinson. I always know Asa, but I never get his last name correct. Hutchinson. I think those were the only 2, and Councilor Freed is going to cover for me for Pilot Hill board meeting in 2 weeks, and I will be over in Cheyenne tomorrow, so I'll join you guys at dinner tomorrow night.
Okay.
So
it's a reception tomorrow night. Would that it'll be hors d'oeuvres. Is that where you're going to join us?
That's where I'm joining you.
You're going to join us for the dinner the next night?
Yes. Nancy is going to be at her daughter's orchestra choir performance.
So you're going to join us.
Take her.
Oh, very good.
Yes.
Okay. I also was very proud to sit at the city table for the 20 under 40 and to celebrate Councilor Behill and Lieutenant Hutchinson. So that was fun. Like I said earlier, I went to the Forge exhibit, and next week it's on the 19th that they begin housing. It was very interesting to be going to economic development and to see the intersection of housing and how important that is to economic development. Wednesday we had Civil Service Commission, and I think it was about 15 fire applicants for firefighter were able to pass their initial qualifying exams, and about 4, I might be a little off on these numbers, police dispatch people were able to qualify. And so that gives them a decent pool to pull from when there is an opening. And I think with fire, they anticipate 4. So we'll have a decent pool. Then on Thursday, the 5th, I attended the Happy Housing Hour at the Laramie Plains Civic Center. Councilor Bowling was also there, and it was put on by the Wyoming Neighbors for Housing in conjunction with the Albany County Housing and Land Trust. There were a couple presentations, the longer one from Fred Schmeckel, who's our chair of Urban Renewal and also interim president of the Housing Trust. And it was an excellent presentation. It was so concise and organized, nothing extra in it. There were maybe 40 people there, and a lot of the leaders we know from town and from various NGOs, and especially there were an awful lot of young people there, and that was wonderful to see. It was a much younger generation that was at that meeting predominantly. So I think that's thanks to the Wyoming Neighbors for Housing. Participated in the interviews. We had 8 wonderful interviews. It's going to be a hard decision. Tomorrow we'll be at WHAM. I start out 10:30 with the Leadership Training Committee. Then Jim and I will be attending the regional meeting, Region 1 meeting from 2 to 4. And then on Thursday, I have the privilege to be a moderator at one of the sessions. And don't laugh when I say this. The session I'm moderating is Don't Break the Chain of Command, Defining Roles and Responsibilities. So I thought that was funny. Councilor O'Doherty.
So the Environmental Advisory Commission met, and we got a report from Mr. Levine, and his background is in emissions when he worked for Tri-Hydro, so he knows a lot about methane and the landfill. And he figured out that the ICLEI calculator we were using for emissions is not really good for our situation, and so he went back to using the EPA calculator for our emissions inventory. But it's kind of depressing because it looks like we haven't put a dent in our emissions, and part of it, I guess, is because we have the new municipal operations center. So when we look at buildings and facilities, so that number, the amount of energy has gone up. I hope when we decommission the older buildings that it'll go down again. But the precision, like it's just hard to get real precise, and so much, like heating this winter, we haven't needed as much, right? Or maybe in this building we have. So anyway, so it's very, it's kind of frustrating trying to nail that down. So, but anyway, so we're just going to try to be on the same calculator, and we have a good man to do it because it's right up his alley.
Good.
That's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Vice Mayor,
Thank you.
had something?
Yes, if it's possible, that February 19th, is there a way to get a calendar invite sent to us for that, for the Forge housing thing that they're doing down there? Is that possible?
Yeah, I'll put something together.
Thank you very much. I will forget.
Thank you. That'll be helpful.
Honorable Mayor, through you to all councilors, especially Councilor Doherty, we're doing some work around here with the remodel, as you know, and we've come to find out that these windows that are installed in don't have any thermal breaks in them. And so one of the things, they've been in for, 20 or 25 years since the last remodel, but one of the things that we'll be looking at towards the end of the project, if there's any cost savings, is the potential of replacing these windows with appropriate thermal breaks. And really, if you feel the windows, you can touch the windows and they're okay, but if you touch anything around the frame, it's ice cold. That's because the windows that were installed weren't properly insulated at the time when they were installed. So we do continue to watch and look for those energy efficiency improvements. I do know the firefighters purchased a new thermal imaging device that I do plan one night asking them to come out and see. I want to see what the thermal imaging looks like. Now, with everything, you know, emissions and all these uses, it's a hard winter to judge anything on, right? But we need cold weather outside and to measure to shoot the windows. Otherwise, you don't get a good reading. So we're starting to head into some cold weather, and hopefully we'll get some readings.
Thank you, City Manager. Now, if we could take a look at the agenda for next week. If you start with the consent agenda, is there any item that you would like moved to the regular agenda?
Besides cemetery.
Beside what?
Besides cemetery.
Besides them cemetery.
Okay, cemetery on the regular it is. The one the Vice Mayor and I had a question about was 9J. I don't know that we made necessarily terribly substantive changes in rules of procedure, and we didn't think it needed to be, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention just in case. Okay. Then regular agenda, any questions on that? All right, seeing none. Now I don't need a motion for this one, do I?
No, Mayor, you can adjourn.
We are adjourned.